Welcome, all you guys, in this third live session for paper FR Remian classes. Today, I'm going to start the discussion with IS 37, which is also very important standard. It is about provisions, contingent liabilities, and contingent assets. So, let's start the discussion. What is the objective of this standard? The objective of IS 37 is to ensure that appropriate recognition criteria and measurement bases are applied to provisions, contingent liabilities, and contingent assets, and that sufficient information is disclosed in notes to the financial statements to enable users to understand their nature, timing, and amount. Now, what is important? This standard will give you the criteria about recognition and measurement of what provision, contingent liabilities, and contingent assets. So this standard covers three things: provisions, contingent liabilities, and contingent assets. Then what is the scope of this standard? IS 37 excludes obligations and contingencies arising from financial instruments, which is now IFRS 9 financial instruments. Non-onerous executory contracts, insurance contracts are any item which is covered by another IFRS. Let's assume IS 12 covers the obligations related to deferred tax liabilities. Now this is the specific law. And IS 19 covers employees' benefits. Okay. To pensions and other employees' benefits obligations. Okay. So this standard will apply to all sort of provisions, contingent liabilities, and contingent assets, else these below mentioned things. Now, these definitions are very important. First definition is about provision. What is provision? It is a liability of uncertain timing or amount. So first of all, this is a liability, but here you don't know about when this liability will occur and what amount you are supposed to pay. You are uncertain about two things. You are certain that you have obligation, but when that obligation you will pay, and at which amount you will pay, you are not certain about that. Okay. After that, liability. It is present obligation as a result of past events, and settlement is expected to result in an outflow of resources. Now, what is liability? You all people are know that this is current obligation, which for to settle that obligation you are supposed to outflow your resources, and this obligation is a result of an past event. Okay. Then contingent liability, a possible obligation, depending on whether some uncertain future event occurs. Present obligation, but payment is not probable or the amount cannot be measured reliable. Now, there are two segments of this definition. First one is possible obligation, not a probable obligation, which depends on whether some uncertain future event occur. So its occurrence will depend upon a event which will occur in the future. So you are not certain whether that future will occur or not. But it is otherwise it is a present obligation. But its amount cannot be determined reliably. So first of all, we are supposed to look at what is possible obligation. In next slides, we will talk about different types of obligations. Then contingent asset, a possible asset that arises from past event and whose existence will be confirmed only by the occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more uncertain future events, not wholly within the control of the entity. It's like that you guys are asking your friend that if you are cricket fan that Pakistan team will win the match, then I will give you one watch, wristwatch. So when you will get the wristwatch, if Pakistan will win, and that is not in your control. It's like that. So possible asset means it is past event. You have discussion with each other, but its confirmation, its existing confirmation will depend upon future event. Okay. What is the recognition criteria of provisions? An entity must recognize a provision if and only if a present obligation, which could be legal, which could be constructive, we will discuss the both, has arisen as a result of past event, the obligating event. That you have present obligation as a result of past event. Payment is probable. Probable means chances of occurrence are more than chances of non-occurrence. So it's more likely than not. It means chances of occurrence are more than non-occurrence. The amount can be estimated reliably. You may have any reliable estimate. So this is the criteria. These two criteria are for every sort of liabilities, because we have discussed provision is a liability. To recognize liability, these two must be fulfilled, and payment is probable. That is also third criteria, which is only applicable to provisions. Now, an obligating event is an event that creates a legal or constructive obligation and therefore result in an entity having no realistic alternative but to settle the obligation. So what is obligating event? Any event which creates your obligation, which creates your liability. It is a legal, law will enforce you that you should have to settle this obligation. Or constructive obligation means it is your customary practices, past practices. So your customs enforce you to do this. A constructive obligation arises if past practice creates a valid expectation on the part of a third party. Constructive obligation arises if past practice, it means your custom, what you are doing in your past. For example, a retail store that has a long-standing policy of allowing customers to return merchandise within, say, a 30-day period. So this is your practice. Due to that practice, there is a possibility that you may have obligation. So obligating event occurs obligating event occurs through either legal judgment or legal findings or through your constructive obligations. There is a rare case when you are not clear about your present obligation. In that case, you will take all available evidences. Those will give you the additional information that your present obligation exists at the balance sheet date. So in that case, you will recognize provision for a present obligation if other recognition criteria like would be fulfilled. Otherwise, if other criteria would not be fulfilled, what you will do, disclose it as a contingent liability. We will discuss later in detail about contingent liabilities. Now, how my provisions will be measured? The amount you are going to recognize as a provision should be best estimate of the expenditure required to settle the present obligation at the balance sheet date. At your reporting date, it would be your best estimate. That is the that is the amount entity is supposed to pay to settle the obligation in a rational way, not in unfair way at balance sheet date or to transfer it to third party. For instance, first of all, we are supposed to look at provisions for one-off events. Restructuring is a one-off event, environmental cleanup, settlement of lawsuits. These are not recurring events. These will occur once, are measured at most likely amount. These are measured at most likely amount, the best estimate you will use as your provision. When you have large population of events, same nature, recurring activities like customer refunds, sales returns, warranty claims, etc. Over there, you will use probability weighted expected value. You will use average. Expected value is the average of results of different populations. In both measurements, what you will do, you will use the present value, and that present value you will calculate at pre-tax discount rate. Okay, now I'm repeating this slide in just a one sentence. If you have one-off event, in that case, best possible estimate. And if recurring, you will calculate the average by using probability distribution method. And for both measurements, to calculate the 2 days amount, you must have to calculate the present value. And for that purpose, the interest rate which you will use, that would be pre-tax interest rate. Now, first specific case, restructuring. So first of all, we are supposed to understand what is restructuring. Restructuring is a program that is planned and controlled by management. So it is a program which is planned and controlled by whom? Management. And it materially changes, means principally it changes the thing. What? Either scope of business undertaken or the manner in which that business is conducted. If you want to increase your product lines, beg your pardon, your product lines, in that case, scope of your business have been changed. And the second thing is manner in which that business is conducted. The way you are conducting the business. If your uh, spectrum of business is changed or the way you are doing your business is changed, then we will say that there is a restructuring. And it is always planned and controlled by management. When you can create the provision. So this is the additional criteria to recognize the provision for restructuring. A detailed, formal and approved plan exists and the plan has been announced to those affected. Due to restructuring, I'm sharing you the example. Recent times in Pakistan, nowadays it's a hot debate. Uh, we have Pakistan Steel Mill, which is government-based organization. This is the government-based organization, owned organization. And it has thousands of employees. And for so many years, this organization is facing losses. And due to that, recently, government of Pakistan has decided to launch the restructuring plan, and through that plan, they have given golden handshake to a lot of employees of this organization. Now that is the restructuring of Pakistan Steel Mill by the government of Pakistan with an objective to change the manner its business is conducted. Okay. And what will be included to recognize the provision for restructuring? Include all direct expenditures arising from restructuring and will exclude costs associated with ongoing activities. Day-to-day operations activities are not. A golden handshake is an early retirement policy given to the employees. Exclude costs associated with ongoing activities. You will only consider direct expenditures arising from restructuring. Okay, now the cost associated with retraining or relocating staff, marketing or investment in new systems and distribution networks may not be included. So these are the cost principle is if your all the costs, those are for your day-to-day activities. If it will principally change the way you are doing your operations or the scope of your business, then it will be considered as restructuring and its direct expenditure related to restructuring will be allowed for provision. Others expenses, those are for day-to-day workings, you cannot create a provision. Then onerous contracts. Onerous contracts are contracts, those are unfavorable. Those are unfavorable. And sometimes business is supposed to be entered in a contracts, those are unfavorable, where to get some other benefits in the long run. So these are unavoidable costs of meeting the obligations under the contract exceeds the economic benefits expected to be received under it. The signing of the contract is a past event, giving rise to the obligation to make the payments, and those payments discounted if the effect is material will be measure of excess of cost over the benefit. So provision would be only allowed for the net cost that should be recognized as expense in your statement of profit and loss. So net loss would be for against net loss, you will only recognize your provision, and later on, once you will unwind the discount, let's assume you are supposed to make the payment uh, from current time period to in year 2 time period of 2000. So to create this is the ultimate loss which you are bearing due to this contract, onerous contract. Onerous contract definition is these are the loss making contracts where your benefits are less than your costs. So today is year 0 and exactly after 1 year it would be year 1. So you will discount this. Let's assume your discount cost of capital is R is 10%. So it would be 0.826 times 2000 and is equal to uh, 0.826 times 2000 is equal to 1652. This is the provision which you have created now, and after 1 year, what you required 2000 at the end of year 2. You will unwind this 1652 times 0.10. You will add up 165 in this. For again, you will increase your provision from 1652 to plus 165. It would be 1817. Then again, you will add up 10% of this amount, and it will become 2000 at the end of the year 2. Okay. Now, this process is called unwinding. So once you're doing the unwindings, it will be charged as finance cost and your provision will be increased. Then provision for warranty. Warranty is often given in manufacturing and retailing businesses. This is either a legal or constructive obligations to make good or replace faulty products. So first of all, what is provision? Provision is often given or is provided to make good the faulty or defective products. So for that purpose, it could be by law of the jurisdiction where you are operating or from your customs that you are providing the warranty. So provision you are creating when at the time of sale, because due to that sale, you are expecting that in future there would be repairment or replacement. You will not create a provision because whole provision concept is based on prudence concept that expected losses must have to be recognized immediately. Okay. So how much amount you are supposed to create the provision for warranties will depend upon your estimate of your past experience. How many claims will be made? First of all, first thing, and then second case is how much each repair will cost. So you will estimate these two things, and then you will estimate the total amount of uh, provision. At the end of every accounting period, you should have to review whether the provision which you have estimated that is accurate or not. And then you will again increase or decrease the amount of provision. It would work like you were creating the allowance for your doubtful debts. Then provision for guarantee. In some instances, you are providing guarantee on behalf of another to pay off a loan. If they will not be able to uh, uh, pay, it is like you are giving security to someone else who is granting the loan. A provision should be made for this guarantee if it is probable that the payment will have to be made. You will only recognize the provision if you are virtually probable that the payment will have to be made. Otherwise, you will disclose that amount as a contingent liability because it is not probable. Future operating losses, no provision can be created for future operating losses because they are supposed to be arise in future, and you can avoid by having a good strategy, and therefore you don't have any obligations. So due to this, there would be no provision for future operating losses. Environmental provision, this is the provision to secure, this is the cost to secure your environment. And it is either legal, either constructive. You as being a good corporate citizen may taking the responsibility to protect the environment, and for that purpose you are incurring some costs, or it is the legal requirement. For instance, uh, Pakistan is nowadays facing a big threat for of global warming and environmental pollution. So due to that, they have like government have uh, suspended the manufacturing activities of certain segments in this time period, say from November to December and January, by mid of January. So this is the new development, and this is the legal requirement that organization will not do the manufacturing in this time period, and they have to opt some precautionary measures as well as. So that cost is result of legal requirement. And for that purpose, you will calculate the present value by using the discounted rate. And discount rate which you will use, that would be again pre-tax market rate. Provision can be only used for the purpose for which that was originally recognized. If you have provision for restructuring, you cannot use that provision for environmental protection costs. Okay, so this is the one thing which you should have to understand. Then what would be the journal entry when provision is recognized, either asset debit or expense debit to provision credit? And when provision is de-recognized, then at that time provision debit, asset credit or expense credit. After that, contingent liabilities. Contingent liabilities should never be recognized in statement of financial position, and these should be only disclosed in notes to the accounts. Okay, Then contingent assets, again, these should never be recognized as an asset, but these should be disclosed into the notes to the accounts. Now keep in mind, contingent assets and contingent liabilities will never be recognized in your SFP. You will never find any contingent liability or contingent asset in your SFP, but it would be only recognized uh, provision in your financial statements. Only provisions can be recognized in your financial statements, but contingent liabilities and contingent assets will be recognized in your notes to the accounts. This is the summary. First of all, this is the degree of certainty. If you have virtual certain, and if it is outflow, virtual certain means it must have to be happen, recognized as liability. If it is virtually certain, recognized as asset. If it is probable, if it is probable, means chances of occurrence are more than non-occurrence, but it's not 100% sure. And if it is outflow is probable, then recognize provision. And if inflow is probable, then disclose as contingent asset. But if chances are possible are means chances of occurrence of anything is less than chances of non-occurrence of that thing. Then if it is for outflow, then disclose as contingent liability, but if it is inflow, ignore, don't do anything. And if degree of certainty is remote, again, for either outflow, either inflow, ignore it. So this was the discussion about provisions. For every class of provision, you should have to disclose opening balance, additional used amount, charged amount, reversed amount, unwinding of discount, and closing balance. And also you are supposed to give the information about nature, timing, uncertainties, assumptions, and reimbursement of provisions. This was the discussion about IS 37 provisions. I'm just going to share you the other. Now the topic which I'm going to discuss is IS 21, the effect of changes in foreign currency exchange rates. We will discuss the objective of this standard. We will discuss different definitions. Then the difference between functional currency and presentation currency. Then we will talk about functional currency recognition. Objective of this standard is to prescribe how to include foreign currency transactions and foreign operations in financial statements of an entity, and how to translate financial statements into presentation currency. We will talk about later on about presentation currency or functional currencies. Then definitions. These are four important definitions. Functional currency, the currency of the primary economic environment in which entity operates. For instance, if your company is operating in Pakistan, its functional currency would be PKR. Okay. Then presentation currency, the currency in which financial statements are presented. Let's assume they are in Pakistan. If company is operating, then again it would be PKR. But if its operations are done here of this company, but its financial statements are prepared in Europe because its parent company is in Europe, and over there the financial statements are prepared in euro. In that case, presentation currency would be euros. Then exchange difference. The difference resulting from translating a given number of units of one currency into another currency at different exchange rates. So this is the result of once you are translating any number of units of one currency into another currency at different exchange rates, the difference is called exchange difference. For instance, if you have $100 and you want to convert those $100 into PKR, today is say rate is 160 PKR for $1, and after certain time period it would be different. So in that case, the exchange rate is arising, that is called exchange difference. Then foreign operations. If you have any subsidiary, associate, joint venture, or branch whose activities are done in another country or currency than that of your reporting currency, that is called foreign operations. Then, spot rate. Rate in place at the date of transaction. This is the rate which is in place at the date of transaction. 2 days say you are doing the transaction and the exchange rate which is 2 days rate, that is spot rate. Then closing rate. Rate at the reporting date. Once you are reporting your financial results at that date, the rate which you have, that is closing rate. Then average rate. Average rate throughout the accounting period. This is the average of all the rates which you have in during your accounting period, and that is called your average rate. Now, the question in this standard related to foreign currency is exchange rates is which rate you are supposed to use, that we will discuss later. Then what is the difference between functional currency versus presentation currency? This is Nestle Pakistan. Nestle Pakistan is operating in Pakistan and its client is from Bangladesh. Nestle is selling goods to Bangladeshi client, and Bangladeshi client is paying to Nestle Pakistan, and he received Taka, which is the currency of Bangladesh. Now, this is functional currency of Nestle Pakistan is PKR because principal activity is done in PKR currency in Pakistan, is done in Pakistan, and here it has operations, so that's why its currency, functional currency is PKR. But its parent company is situated in Switzerland, which is Nestle Switzerland. And you are supposed to provide reports to Nestle Switzerland. So over there, your presentation currency is euro because you are supposed to share your results in euro currency because your head office is in Switzerland. First of all, first question is how to report the foreign currency transactions in functional currency. Let's assume Bangladeshi Taka. How Bangladeshi Taka will be reported in Pakistan. For that purpose, initial recognition would be at spot exchange rate at the date of transaction. Subsequent recognition would be if it is monetary item. If it is monetary item, you people know very well monetary items are the items those value remains constants In that case, you will recognize it at the closing rate at reporting period date subsequently. Initially, it would be recognized at spot exchange rate. Then non-monetary items. Here, it will depend upon two factors. If non-monetary items is recognized at historical cost in your financial statements, then you will use historical rate at the date of transaction. Let's assume you bought a furniture 5 years ago from one supplier of say United Kingdom. So at that date, what the exchange rate you have of uh, UK pound sterlings and PKR rupees, you will use that rate. And if you are recognizing your non-monetary items at fair value, it means you will use the rate at date when you have measured your fair value. So any exchange rate difference is presented where I either gain, either loss in your statement of profit and loss. And if it is non-monetary item, that is recognized in OCI, other comprehensive income, then you will also recognize exchange rate in OCI. Exchange rate gain or loss, you will recognize in OCI. So this was the discussion about another standard, which is IS 21. Now, the standard which I'm going to discuss, that is IFRS 13 fair value measurement. What we will discuss in this standard, the objective of the standard, scope of the standard, definitions, principal market, advantageous market, market participants, how to determine fair value, and disclosures. First of all, objective of IFRS 13 is to define fair value. So its first objective is to define fair value. And the second objective is to set out in a single IFRS framework for measuring the fair value. It only provides you about measurement of the fair value and what sort of the disclosure requires for fair value measurement. So this is important thing. How to set fair value, how to measure fair value, how to determine fair value is prescribed by IFRS 13. When to apply your fair value, when to recognize your asset or liability at fair value is not in the jurisdiction of this standard. When to apply fair value is done by specific standard. For example, IS 16 revaluation model gives you the criteria when to apply fair value. So this is the standard which gives you the criteria how to determine fair value. Okay. Then scope. IFRS 13 will apply it only and only when any other standard requires to measure the fair value and to determine the fair value. In that case, IFRS 13 applies to determine the fair value and accept these three bases. Say share-based payments, IFRS 2 is not in the jurisdiction of IFRS 13. Leasing transactions, fair value is not in the jurisdiction of IFRS 13. And if you have other measurements, those are looking like a similar to fair value, but those are not a fair value. Say NRV, net realizable value in IS2. It is different from this because over there NRV is calculated by subtracting estimated selling cost from estimated selling price. Okay. Our value in use in IS 36, again, this is different. Value in use is what? Higher of fair value less cost to sell, or recoverable amount is higher of value in use or fair value less cost to sell. So value in use is not a fair value. Definition: fair value: the price that would be received to sell an asset or paid to transfer a liability in an orderly transaction between market participants at the measurement date. Now, what is market participants? That is also important. And then what is orderly transaction? So this is the price, fair value is the price you are supposed to pay to settle your liability, or you will receive by selling an asset in an orderly transaction. Orderly transaction means the transaction which is without any undue influence or coercion, where your consent is free. It is just a professional dealing between market participants. The participants, those are playing a role in the market. We will discuss later. Active market is a market in which transactions of assets and liabilities took place with sufficient frequency and volume to provide pricing information on ongoing basis. This is the market where there is too much transaction about that asset or liability. For instance, I have talked with you recently that in Pakistan, in Lahore, there is a Hafiz Center where too much transactions are occurring on a recurring basis for the sale and purchase of smartphones. Then principal market. It is a market with the greatest volume and level of activity of the asset or liability. So this is the major market which could be indicated as an active market, where you have the most numbers of volumes and activities of that particular asset and liabilities transaction. The most advantageous market. This is the market after principal market that will maximize your amount to receive against the sale of your asset, and will minimize the amount which you are supposed to pay to transfer your liability after deducting your account your transaction cost and transport cost. Now let's assume, as I discussed earlier, that the big market in Lahore vicinity for smartphone is Hafiz Center, and someone is saying you that if you will go to the Hall Road, that is also another market for smartphones. Over there, uh, your overall price would be higher by selling that asset. So there is a cost which you are supposed to bear to transport to get access to that market, that is transport cost. And there is a transaction cost. There is a possibility that someone may have uh, the traders may have some transaction related, say your sales commission related cost, so that is called your transaction cost. It's another classic example is the real estate industry. Okay, so most advantageous market is a market other than principal market, where overall your assets can be sold at a maximum amount, or where your liability can be settled with at lowest amount. Now, this is the price that would be received to sell an asset or paid to transfer a liability. This statement is called exit price. The price that would be received to sell an asset or paid to transfer a liability. So the amount which you are getting by selling the asset or the amount which you are paying to settle your liability is called exit price. Then principal market may be different market for different entities. Let's assume these are two markets. One is retail market and the other is inter-dealer market. And you have two different commodities. One is working as a securities dealer who is dealing in the securities, and other is a manufacturer. In both cases, now securities dealer have access to inter-dealers market as well as have access to retail market. Okay. Now, in that case, what would be its principal market? Because securities dealer is dealing in two markets. In that case, this inter-dealer market is his principal market because here he is trading in the greatest volume. On the other side, retail market is not his principal market, but for manufacturer, he is only dealing in retail market. He is not dealing in inter-dealers market. He don't have access for inter-dealer market. So his principal market is only retail market. Okay, got the point? When principal market not exists, then what you will do? If your principal market is not existed, then you will refer yourself to where? Most advantageous market. Over there, you will consider your transaction cost and transport costs. Now, first of all, to determine most advantageous market, you will consider both transport cost and transactions cost. To determine your fair value, you will not consider transaction cost, you will only incorporate transport cost. Means to determine your fair value, you will only subtract transport cost. But to determine whether it is your advantageous market or not, you will also subtract your transaction cost. Who are market participants? All the buyers and sellers in principle are, if you don't have any principal market, then most advantageous market, all the buyer and sellers for assets or liabilities are called market participants. What are the characteristics they have? They must have to be independent. It means their consent must be free, which I have discussed earlier also. They are knowledgeable. They have complete knowledge of the market. Sorry, I'm not feeling well, so that's why I have flu. And able to enter in transaction, they have a capacity, they have a ability to enter in the transaction, and they are willing to enter in the transaction. So if these four characteristics they have, and they are buyer and seller, those are operating in principal and most advantageous markets, they are called market participants. How to determine fair value? First of all, look in the level 1 where you have active markets. If you don't have that, then you will go in level 2, you will find out the price of similar assets. If you don't have access to this, then you will use different valuation techniques to determine your fair value. Now, level 1 is the standard of market forces to determine your fair value. And level 3 is a standard of different models, different techniques to determine your fair value. And level 2 is in between these two levels. Level 1, where you have active market for identical assets and liabilities at measurement date when you are measuring the fair value, and you have quoted prices, and you are only relying on those quoted prices. You don't need to make any adjustment. That is level 1. In level 2, you are getting the observable input other than those included within level 1 above, but which are observable directly or indirectly. This may include quoted prices for similar but not identical, not ditto copy, but something different assets. Say if you want to get the determine the price of say RD, you may have another RD core, but its model is a bit different. In that case, it is observable level 2 uh, input to determine your fair value. But sometimes you have identical item but inactive market. In that case, you will use that. But for these level 2 prices which you are obtaining for your assets or liabilities, that you may need to make some adjustments on those. And in level 3, these are unobservable inputs of assets and liabilities, but you are using the best available informations to determine your fair value. Once you are determining the fair value, you must have to account for the characteristics of the assets or liabilities. Such characteristics may include conditions and locations of the asset and restrictions, if any, on the sale or use of the asset. If you have any restrictive covenant or condition, and where that is located, because geographical distance is also very important. Say iPhone of Google, they have different prices in different localities because the buying power of the market participants are different. Say, price in America would be different from the price which is in Sierra Leone, or the price which is in Zimbabwe, in Pakistan may be different. So you should have to account for those all things to determine your fair value. What are the disclosure requirements? At first of all, what level you input you have, level 1 or level 2 or level 3, and as well as you should have to give the information about whether you are using any valuation technique if you are determining the fair value from level 3. So that's it for this standard. Meanwhile, I'm sharing you the another topic. Now, the topic which we are going to start, that is IS 10, events after the reporting period. What we will discuss in this session, the objective of this standard, important definitions, adjusting events, non-adjusting events, and going concern assumption and disclosures. So these are the areas which we will cover. First of all, the objective of this standard is to prescribe what, when you should adjust your financial statements for the events after reporting period, and what you should disclose about these events. So these are the two things which are covered in this standard that if any event occurring after the reporting period, when you should have to adjust it in your financial statements, or what you should have to disclose about these events. Now, first definition is events after reporting period. An event which could be favorable or unfavorable. Favorable. It could be favorable. It could be unfavorable. Favorable that occurs between the end of reporting period and the date when financial statements authorized for issue. So these events occurs between these two dates, reporting period end date and the date when financial statements are authorized for issue. If any event occur in between these two dates, that is called event after the reporting period. It's explained through this timeline. Say end of reporting period is 30th June 2019. Closing work finished 30th July 2019. Board of Director authorized for issue 15th August 2019. And shareholders approval comes at 5th of September 2019. Now, when financial statements are authorized for issue 15th August. So your reporting period is and events related to this are from 30th June onward to 15th of August. Okay. Now adjusting events. An event after the reporting period that provides further evidence of conditions that existed at the end of the reporting period. Sorry, I'm not feeling well. It is just my commitment, so that's why I'm delivering the lecture. An event after the reporting period that provides further evidence of what conditions that existed at the end of the reporting period, and that indicates that going concern assumption in relation to the whole or part of the enterprise is not appropriate. So if any event will give you the evidence, further evidence for what? Number one, for the conditions those are existed at the end of the reporting period. And that will indicate about the going concern assumptions. For instance, you know that we are preparing our financial statements on going concern basis. Say if you have made a contract between that particular time period and due to that contract, you have decided to disclose certain to close certain segments of your business. In that case, going concern assumption is not appropriate. So that's why you will say that that is an adjusting event. Then non-adjusting events. An event after the reporting period that is indicative of a conditions that arose after the end of reporting period. Now, these non-adjusting events are the events, those are not giving you any further evidence for the conditions those existed at the reporting period, but that gives to the indications that arose for after the reporting period. Okay. So you have made a contract to buy certain quantity of your input from one supplier in future time period. Now that is one event, but it is non-adjusting event. Adjusting events. What to do with those events? You must have to adjust the amount which you have recognized in your financial statement at the end of the reporting period if you have adjusting events. Examples: discovery of fraud. You have found some fraud, and it means the figures which you have in your financial statements, they are not accurate. If your client is become bankrupt, it means your receivables would no more be available to you. That is also an example of adjusting event. Court case decision. So that decision gives you the evidence about the provision which you have provided about litigation. Sale of inventory, that is also an event which gives you the indication about to determine your NRV. So these are all adjusting events. Now, non-adjusting events, what to do with those events? Disclose for each material category of non-adjusting events after the reporting period. If they are material, then you should have to disclose them in your financial statements. Both what you have to disclose, nature of the event, and the its impacts on your financials. Examples: decline in fair value of your investment. Now it has prospective effect. Decline in fair value of your investment, and natural disaster, earthquake, it has also future impact. Announcement of major restructuring, again it's a future impact. Entering into major commitment guarantee, it's a future impact. New litigation started, it's a future impact. Issuance or purchase of shares, it's a future impact. So all those events, those not giving you any evidence for the conditions those have at the end of the accounting period, are called non-adjusting events. And declaration of dividend after reporting period. Then going concern. Organization will never prepare its financial statements on going concern basis if management determines after the reporting period either that organization will be liquidated, will be closed, or its intent to cease trading, you are going to stop your trading, or have no alternative but to do one of the above. In that case, you will say that your financial statements would not be on going concern basis, but you will prepare your financial statements as discontinued operations. So, what is the meaning of this? It means your liquidation of business, cessation of trading uh, uh, is going to be start, and your financial statements are will never operate for more than uh, 12 months. Okay, so you will disclose your financial statements as a discontinued operations, but you will not prepare your financial statements as a continued business. What are the examples? Management decides to close the business and sell all assets and settle all liabilities. Major earthquake which damage business premises and practically not possible to do business. One is your own decision, and the other is due to the market conditions, you would not be able to perform, to operate your businesses, and that is so that's called you are not supposed to prepare your financial statements on going concern assumptions, but you will prepare your financial statements on the basis of discontinued operations. In your disclosures, you must have to update about the conditions those have at the end of the accounting period for which you have found new informations. And also you should have to disclose the information about financial statements, who are supposed to authorize the issue of financial statements and who give the authorization. And for non-adjusting events, you have to disclose about the nature of the event and its financial estimates, how much financial estimates it have, financial amount, financial figures you should have to disclose. After that, this is all about the discussion for uh, IS 10. Uh, what we will discuss, the objective of this standard, we will talk about this definitions, current tax accounting treatment, and how current tax will be charged in statement of profit and loss, then deferred tax liability, and summary of this standard. Keep in mind, this is the one of the complex standards, but here in these slides, we have focused only what will be tested in your exam of FR. So objective of this standard is to prescribe accounting treatment of income taxes, which is current and future tax consequences. So in this standard, we will talk about current income tax and future income tax of the company. Okay. Then important definitions. First of all, current tax. This is the amount of tax payable or recoverable in respect of taxable profits and losses for the period. What is current tax? This is the tax payable or recoverable in respect of taxable profit and losses for a period. Then deferred tax, the accounting adjustment aim to match the tax effect for transactions to the relevant accounting period. So this is the accounting adjustment of tax amount which you are supposed to do for the another relevant accounting period where this will be mature and its tax effects would be on this. Tax base, this is an asset or liability amount attributed to that asset or liability for tax purposes. So tax base is determined the carrying value of any asset or liability which is used to determine your tax liability, because tax rules are different from accounting rules. There is a possibility that one expense which you have deemed it is taxable may not be taxable as per the tax rules. You may have exemption on that income. Temporary differences. These are the differences between the carrying amount of asset and liability and its tax base. Temporary difference is the difference between the carrying amount which you have in your SFP of an asset or liability and its tax base. Say you are saying your asset value is 100,000, but as per the tax authorities, your tax base is 80,000. So your temporary difference is 20,000. Okay. Then taxable temporary differences. These are the temporary differences due to which your taxable amount in determining the taxable profit and loss of the future period is will result in the taxable amount, and it occurs when the carrying amount of the asset or liability is recovered or settled. And the taxable temporary difference that will result in the taxable amount in determining the taxable profit and loss of future periods when the carrying amount of the asset and liability is recovered or settled. What is the meaning of this statement? That you are determining today your tax liability because at the later on date, the carrying amount of asset and liability would be recovered, there would be any gain or loss. Then deductible tax temporary differences. These are the temporary differences due to which your taxable profit of when the carrying amount your asset or liability is recovered or settled, that the amount is deductible right now. Your tax is and your asset. Deductible temporary differences will lead towards deferred tax asset and I'll try. And taxable temporary difference will lead towards deferred tax liability. Deferred tax liability. The amount of income tax payable in future period in respect of taxable temporary difference. So, please mute your voice. And deferred tax asset is the amount of income tax recoverable in future period in respect of deductible temporary differences, as I discussed earlier, and the carry forward of unused tax losses and carry forward of unused tax credits. So if you have tax credits or losses and deductible temporary differences, there would be deferred tax asset. In paper FR, you are supposed to deal with deferred tax liability. I'll solve the numerical to discuss all these areas, how examiner is going to test this standard. Then current tax calculation. Taxable profit or loss times tax rate. Journal entry would be income tax expense debit to income tax payable credit. And current tax charge in estimate. Please mute your voice, students. Current year tax estimate plus under provision of previous year minus over provision of previous year. So first of all, you will calculate current year tax estimate. That is profit before tax PBT times tax rate. Then you will add previous year under provision and minus over provision of previous year. When under provision, it means previous year tax estimate is less than actual tax because now you have paid the actual tax and you have got the figure. And for over provision, when your tax estimate previous year has greater than your actual tax. So what we will do, over provision we have to subtract and under provision we have to add. Deferred tax is a result of what? Temporary differences. Please, students, mute your voice. This is my humble request. Carrying amount, carrying amount is in your accounting record. Is in your accounting record, and your tax base is greater than your tax base, then the difference, which is a result, that is temporary, taxable temporary difference, and will lead to your deferred tax liability. Now in paper FR, tax base will always be given to you in your question. You may be required to calculate your carrying amount. Then if carrying amount is less than your tax base, the difference is deferred tax asset. Deferred tax liability, closing balance, how to calculate? Taxable temporary difference, which you will calculate how? Carrying amount and tax base. Tax base will be given to you always. Carrying amount you may have to calculate times tax rate. You will multiply it with tax rate. And what would be the journal entry? If closing balance is greater than opening balance, income tax expense debit to deferred tax liability credit. Now compare the deferred tax liability closing balance with opening balance. It's such like you are increasing the provision for deferred tax liability. And if closing balance is less than opening balance, then entry would be deferred tax liability debit to income tax expense credit. What is the summary? This summary is very important for your exam point of view. Current year tax estimate, most of the cases it would be given to you in questions. Plus under provision of previous year. How under provision you will find, especially in your question of final account, single entity financial statements, it would be debit figure in your trial balance under provision of previous year. Minus over provision of previous year, it would be credit figure in your trial balance. You will subtract over provision, you will add under provision. Then if there is an increase in deferred tax liability, you will add. And if there is a decrease in deferred tax liability, how increase in deferred tax liability calculated? Compare opening deferred tax liability with closing deferred tax liability. So if closing deferred tax liability is greater than opening, there is increase, you will add. If closing deferred tax liability is less than opening deferred tax liability, then subtract. Now, in your deferred tax liabilities, opening balance will be given in your trial balance as a credit balance, and closing balance will be calculated by taxable, comparing tax, multiplying taxable temporary difference with tax rate. What is taxable temporary difference? The difference between carrying amount and tax base. Examiner most of the cases will give you the taxable temporary difference. Or in other case, you have to calculate carrying value and compare it with tax base times tax rate. And this figure will go in your SFP as a deferred tax liability under non-current liability head. Okay. So opening balance will be given to you in trial balance. Closing balance you will calculate by this formula and it will go in your SFP and you will compare the dif difference of both. If closing balance is greater than opening balance will increase in liability and it will go as addition in your statement of profit and loss charge. And if closing balance is less than opening balance, then the difference is decrease in liability and it will be subtracted in your statement of profit and loss charge. Let's assume, take this question. Income tax payable for the year is 60,000. Current year tax estimate is given to you in question. Over provision in related to the previous year 4,500. Opening provision for deferred tax and closing provision for deferred tax. Both deferred tax provisions are given to you. What is the income tax expense that will be shown in statement of profit and loss for the year? Now, formula is, look, this formula. Current year tax estimate plus under provision minus over provision plus increase in deferred tax liability or decrease in deferred tax liability. Now look, current year tax is 60,000. Previous year over provision, we will subtract 4,500. Opening provision of deferred tax is 2,600 and closing provision is 3,200. So there is increase. And how much increase is 600. So you will add that 600 increase in deferred tax liability. So the difference is how much? 60,600 minus 4,500 is equal to 56,100. This is your answer. And again, look, this is now look at this question. Trial balance is given to you 4,000 credit side balance for current year taxation. It means it is over provision. And deferred tax opening liability is 12,000. Taxation balance relates to an over provision for 30th June 2003. We have already determined that this is over provision. At 30th June 2004, the director estimates that the provision necessary for taxation on current year profit is 15,000. Current year estimate is 15,000 plus, minus over provision of 4,000. Now, the carrying amount of Hudson's non-current assets exceeds the tax written down value by 30,000. Now, what he has given to you, he has given you the taxable temporary difference. He has given you taxable temporary difference, which is 30,000. Now, by multiplying this with your rate, your closing balance is calculated how? 30,000 times 30%. How much it is? 9,000. Now you subtracted this 4,000 as over provision and your deferred tax liability closing balance is 30,000 times 30% equals to 9,000. Now opening balance was 12,000 and closing balance is 9,000. There is a decrease in deferred tax liability. Deferred tax liability decrease of 3,000. How? 12,000 opening minus 9,000 closing is equal to 3,000. So your net figure is 8,000. So in this way, you are supposed to calculate your taxation related questions. Students,